Hang on to your seat, baby, cause this one's a screamer. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
On Entertainment, so time comes out with another Hollywood Hot Topics. Y'all know some of the topics are a little bit late, but the kid has been busy. Okay, official girl, I miss you, girl. I wanna be your official girl. It seems as if you'll be a mess, cause I ain't nothing like the rest. I'ma sue your ass, take you to court, get your money back. I'm bossy, I'm classy. You be ashamed that you abuse me. Okay. First I wanted to get into is the Cassie basically filing a $30 million lawsuit against P. Diddy. And then after we're going to jump to the whole Keke Palmer situation and the audio, okay? So this lawsuit to me does not come as a surprise, okay? I feel like this is Diddy's karma hitting him back years later. In my opinion, I really feel like he pissed off somebody in the industry higher up. And that's why lately, you know, karma's been slapping him in the butt. First, he got, you know, questioned about the whole Tupac situation, and now this. So it's kind of like, something's going on, something not right. All right. So this is the document. Thank God it's public, because the document with Keke Palmer, I searched high and below. Some other channels had it, but I don't know them like that, so I didn't even reach out. But high and below so we could read it, but I couldn't find it. So thank God we have this one so we could see the details and not rely on blogs and them just cutting out stuff, right? So first of all, Cassie's real name is Cassandra Ventura. I like that name. She is cute, okay? So Sean Combs, Bad Boy Entertainment, Bad Boy Records, Epic Records, Combs, Enterprises LLC, and DOE Corps 1 through 10, okay? And that's the defendants, and that's who she is taking. All right, so first of all, they put a trigger warning on this document. So that kind of tells you the details that are going to be in this. So for my entertainers, don't be coming in the comments, oh, you could have put a trigger warning. I'm giving you the trigger warning now, okay? Trigger warning. So it said, the truth is, however, is that Cassie, Miss Cassandra Ventura, was held down by Mr. Combs and endured over a decade of his violent behavior and disturbed demands. For Miss Ventura, the dark times were those she spent trapped by Mr. Combs in a cycle of abuse, violence, and sex trafficking, amongst other violent and unlawful acts. Apparently, Diddy allegedly y'all know, Ms. Ventura in her own home after she tried to leave him, often powder in the face, kicked her, stomped on Ms. Ventura, resulting in bruises, burst lips, black eyes, and bleeding. He blew up a man's car after learning he was romantically interested in Ms. Ventura. So Kid Cudi came out and said that his car was blown up. So is this the same guy, or is this a whole other guy? And what the heck do you think you in Breaking Bad, Diddy, and that you was going to get caught up eventually? This is not Breaking Bad. That is crazy. Blowing up a nigga's car. That's another level of crazy to me. Forced Ms. Ventura to engage in acts with male 304 workers while jacking off and filming the encounters. You never going to beat these allegations. I can see this too, because I feel like Cassie's hair was shaved in half in order to have a more masculine appeal. That's why, to me, like, I'm just saying, any straight dude that's into like a masculine type of girl, I side-eye. I'm sorry. Like Blueface, that's another reason why I side-eye him. Because Krishan is a masculine girl. She moves like a nigga, sometimes talk like a nigga, and we saw she punches like a nigga. So it's kind of like, that's what you like. It's no judgment, but I always side-eye niggas like, I'm sorry. It's like, that's just me. But hey, maybe I'm alone. All right. So he said, ran out of his apartment with Pow Pow in a pursuit of a rivalry industry exec whom he learned was nearby. Demanded that Ms. Ventura to carry his Pow Pow in her purse just to make her uncomfortable and demonstrate how dangerous he is. So he basically forced her to carry the strap in her clutch when she didn't even want to do it, which is in all ways, one, is manipulative because you low-key scaring her. And two, let's say if something were to happen legally, she would get in trouble because I doubt she was licensed. Introduced Ms. Ventura to a lifestyle of excessive drinking and substance and required her some words I'm not going to say because y'all know how YouTube do. So don't think I can't read. Bookie bats. Okay. Some words I just can't say because YouTube will, and required her to, Jesus. Oh, require her to take Tic Tacs. If y'all don't know what Tic Tacs are, they're pills. We're not going to say the word. All right. To satisfy his own addictions. Ms. Ventura met Mr. Combs in 2005 when she was 19 years old and when he was 37 years old. He signed her to his label Bad Boy Records and within a few years lured Ms. Ventura into a fast-paced and drug-fueled lifestyle into a romantic relationship with him. Her boss, one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry and a vicious, cruel, and controlling man nearly 2 decades her senior. Mr. Combs asserted complete control over Ms. Ventura's personal and professional life, thereby ensuring her inability to escape his hold. He provided unprecedented avenues for success for the aspiring artist, but in return demanded obedience, loyalty, and silence. We saw all of this on Making the Band, okay? Diddy did not play back in the day, and he probably doesn't play now. That's why they're making the jokes to Young Miami about, Young Miami being controlled by him. I don't see this being done by Young Miami. Young Miami might be dumb, but she's street smart. So I think she peeps certain things and she would know how to maneuver. And I feel like she's lucky finessing him more than he's finessing her. Throughout their relationship, Mr. Combs was prone to uncontrollable rage and frequently beat Ms. Aventura savagely. These beatings were witnessed by Mr. Combs' staff and employees of Bad Boy Entertainment and Mr. Combs' related businesses, but no one dared to speak up against their frightening and ferocious boss. Following these episodes of horrific abuse, Mr. Combs would immediately attempt to hide Ms. Aventura and the evidence of his rage. He often showered her with gifts following incidents of violence, a typical pattern behavior by serial abusers. In addition to the physical assaults, Mr. Combs frequently reminded Ms. Ventura of his ability to cause serious harm, whether by requiring her to carry his strap in her purse. Now, that's a little weird to me. Why are you doing that? Like, that to me is like, that's another level of sick. If she's like, if she's not comfortable with carrying that, why would you force her into doing that? Not even that, you put her into danger at that. Or by blowing up the car of a musician that was more romantically interested in Ms. Ventura. So now this confirms the Kid Cudi story, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Adding insult to injury, Mr. Combs used substances and threats of papang her to force Ms. Ventura into repeated unwanted encounters with male dudes. Over the years, Mr. Combs hit Ms. Ventura physically and sexually. She again and again tried to escape his tight hold over her life. Every time she hid, Mr. Combs' vast network of corporations and affiliated entities found her, and those who worked for Mr. Combs' companies implored her return to him. Many went as far to explicitly state that her failure to return to Mr. Combs would hinder her success in the entertainment industry. In my opinion, Cassie's music trajectory was ruined so early and could have went so far. Like Cassie, I remember when Official Girl dropped, like, I miss you, girl. I want to be your official girl. Like, come on. Like, to me, had she not been under Diddy and she was under some other form of management, I really feel like she would have went farther than what she did. So it's kind of sad all that happened to her and her music dreams were shattered. When she believed that she had finally separated from her longtime abuser, she joined Mr. Combs for a dinner, after which he forced her into her home and her while he repeatedly said no and tried to push him away. So he took advantage of her. Ms. Ventura has now fully escaped Mr. Combs, but the harm that the assaults and abuse he caused her to experience for nearly a decade will forever haunt her. She has required intensive medical and psychological care to recover from the trauma she lived through. I kind of felt that this lawsuit was coming because you notice the guy that Cassie is with, he's always insinuating gay rumors about P. Diddy. He's always saying some slick stuff online, so you could kind of tell something was kind of brewing because he was being bold about it too. He would say it on the big blogs, on the neighborhood talk, he'll say something slick. On the shade room, he'll say something slick. He'll always come out and kind of say some not nice things about Diddy. So this to me was in the works for probably a long period of time. She cannot, however, continue to live in silence about what she endured. Mr. Combs remained immensely powerful and immensely dangerous. Ms. Ventura therefore seeks justice for the decade of her life that Mr. Combs took away from her with threats of violence, excessive use of tic tacs, physical and psychological abuse, and I can't even say those two words. I hate you too. Oh God. I can't say it because I don't want to get striked, okay? Accordingly, Ms. Ventura brings this action seeking injunctive, declaratory, and monetary relief against defendants in violation of federal trafficking laws. Plaintiff Cassandra Ventura is a resident of the states of California and Connecticut, was employed by the defendants Bad Boy Records LLC and Bad Boy Entertainment and related entities at relevant hearing. Ms. Ventura met the definition of an employee of defendants under all relevant statutes. Defendant Sean Combs, upon information believed, resides within the state of California at all relevant times herein. Mr. Combs met the definition of employee of plaintiff under all relevant statutes. Okay? So let's get back to the allegations. Ms. Ventura met Mr. Combs in late 2005 or early 2006 after Mr. Combs heard Ms. Ventura's first single playing in a club and expressed interest in signing her to his label, Bad Boy Records. It's so crazy now. Like, now it's extremely hard for you to get a label to notice you because there's so much competition. But back then, you had to just go to a quick, open night where, celebrities might be there, or a club where a celebrity might be there, hop on the mic, sing something real quick, and and you just sign. Now, girl, you got a trend on TikTok, do a hop and a skip, a video got a trend. You got to have over 1 million followers. Like, it takes so much work now. At the time, Ms. Ventura was 19 years old. Mr. Combs was 37 years old. Within months, in February 2006, Ms. Ventura signed a 10-album deal with Mr. Combs' record label. Ms. Ventura's first album, Cassie, was released in August 2006, debuting at number 4 on the U.S. Billboard 200s. To promote the album, Ms. Ventura made television appearances on MTV's Total Request Live and BET's 106 Apart. Y'all need to bring back 106 Apart. Ms. Ventura suffered from significant performance anxiety during these appearances, and press outlets were highly critical of Ms. Ventura's performances on these shows. Now, one thing that always stuck in mind to me was Cassie's videos. I never really remember her performances, but I got to go back and kind of watch her older performances if they were that bad to the fact that they were criticizing her that hard. Like, all I remember when it comes to Cassie, her performances don't come to mind when it comes to her. All I remember is, you got a long way to go. I remember that video. I remember the Official Girl video. Like, I just remember her music videos and how good they were. Mr. Combs sought to rehabilitate his newly signed talent, telling MTV News, you could hear the nervousness in her voice. And to be honest, I kind of smiled at it because it made me really appreciate what I really loved about her. She's a regular person. I feel like that's straight cap. Behind the scenes, he was cussing her out hard. It just made me appreciate that she got nervous, and it was kind of cute to me, to be honest. You got to understand that success for her is coming out of nowhere. It is just so huge, and sometimes everybody handles it differently. While clearly paternalistic in noting that it was cute to him now, regular Ms. Ventura appeared Mr. Combs' comments ranged true to some extent. Upon signing with Bad Boy Records, Ms. Ventura was quickly thrust into the spotlight and was unfamiliar with how to navigate her new celebrity status. Mr. Combs' recognition, glorification of Ms. Ventura's naivete proved to set the groundwork for his manipulative and coercive romantic and sexual relationships with Miss Ventura, a woman nearly 2 decades his junior. So how they're trying to spin this lawsuit is they're going to try to make it seem as if she was this, which it is, most of it, I feel like is true, just from reading it and just from things that have been said in the media over time. They're trying to make it seem like she was this naive girl that didn't know what she was getting into in the entertainment industry, and he took advantage of her while his workers kind of witnessed it and let it happen and kind of turn a blind eye to the abuse that he would give her. So that's how they're going to try to push and spin this lawsuit. So I'm wondering if they're going to try to get some of Diddy's team to testify as to what they've witnessed. And if they will, I don't think they will. I feel like they're going to go ghost. We're going to get a whole nother Megan Thee Stallion where the security goes missing the day of the trial and the day of the witness to take the stand. It's going to be one of those. Okay. Within a year of signing with Bad Boy Records, Mr. Combs became deeply entrenched in Miss Ventura's life, almost immediately, asserting possession and control over her and inserting himself into all aspects of her career and personal life. In November 2006, Mr. Combs invited Miss Ventura to perform his song, Come to Me, along with him at the MTV Europe Music Awards in Copenhagen, Denmark. After rehearsal for the performance, Mr. Combs walked around in a robe with a drink in his hand, flaunting his lavish party lifestyle to his label's newly signed artists. During hair and makeup leading up to the performance, Miss Ventura's hairstylist and Mr. Combs' makeup artist told Miss Ventura that Mr. Combs was interested in Miss Ventura. Miss Ventura shrugged off the gossip and in fact expressed disgust given the large age gap between her and the president of her record label, emphasizing the age and the power dynamic. Early on in their working relationship, Mr. Combs positioned himself as a father figure and protector of Miss Ventura. By the way of example, after returning to New York after a trip to Las Vegas, during which she endured a brief hospital stay, Miss Ventura, who by then was fully healthy, went out to a club with her friends. When Mr. Combs saw her out, he reprimanded her, telling her to go home and take care of herself. Ooh. At the time, Miss Ventura thought that her record label was looking out for her well-being and that Mr. Combs had her best interests in mind. Mr. Combs also ensured that he was intertwined with Miss Ventura's personal and social life. For instance, inviting himself to Miss Ventura's 21st birthday party in Las Vegas. He also brought along famous musicians and producers, thereby flaunting celebrity status and influence in front of a young and impressionable Miss Ventura. Although Mr. Combs knew that Miss Ventura was in a relationship at the time, and even though he was publicly in a relationship with Kim Porter, Mr. Combs nevertheless pursued Miss Ventura. Now, with this lawsuit being done, now people are going to start looking even more as to what happened to Kim Porter, because her death to me was very mysterious. It came out of nowhere. It came out of left field. It was eerie. There's just some celebrity, I feel like, deaths that, like, when they're dropped, it just like something is not right. And that was one of the deaths I feel like something was not right. And I remember that day vividly when it was announced. At an after party in a hotel suite following Miss Ventura's 21st birthday party, Mr. Combs pulled Miss Ventura into a bathroom and kissed her. Miss Ventura did not consent to this unwanted contact. She immediately ran out the bathroom in the hotel suite and cried. She told her best friend at the time about what happened, but was too scared to tell anyone else. At the VMAs the following day, Miss Ventura's boyfriend at the time joined her and Mr. Combs at the table at the award ceremony. Mr. Combs became angry, telling Miss Ventura that the invitation to the award ceremony was only for her and not for her significant other. So he was a jealous queen. Despite her clear rejection of Mr. Combs' advances, Mr. Combs continued to demand Miss Ventura spend time with him, including for a weekend at Mr. Combs' residence in Miami and for nights out in New York City. One thing about DL Trey, they love Miami. Oh my God. They run amok in these streets. On God. I'm not laughing at the camera. I'm just laughing at that point. I'm telling you, like, it's sick. It's like this is their mating spot. Miami. Like, it's a flock of them niggas. It's disgusting. Okay? On one particular night around September 2007, Mr. Combs insisted on taking Miss Ventura out. Miss Ventura rejected, fearing that rejecting Mr. Combs' request would have repercussions for her album deal with Mr. Combs and his company, Bad Boy Records. Mr. Combs picked up Miss Ventura from her apartment in Manhattan in a blue luxury vehicle. Miss Ventura was surprised that when she got into the car, Mr. Combs was already inebriated. He handed her a Tic Tac, y'all should know the definition by now, and told her to take it. When Miss Ventura asked what the Tic Tac was, Mr. Combs dismissed her and told her she would like it. She later learned that the Tic Tac was ecstasy, something Miss Ventura had never tried before and did not want to try. This was the first time Mr. Combs got Miss Ventura high. Mr. Combs then proceeded to drive recklessly at a very high speed down the West Side Highway of Manhattan. Miss Ventura was very scared, but did not dare to subject Mr. Combs, who appeared drunk, high, and agitated. Mr. Combs took Miss Ventura to an upscale lounge in downtown Manhattan, where he proceeded to get into an altercation with the security staff who would not permit Mr. Combs to enter, presumably because he was belligerent. Miss Ventura decided to go home, but for the remainder of the night, Mr. Combs messaged Miss Ventura, incessantly complaining that he left him high and alone. In fall 2007, Mr. Combs flexed his power and influence when he paid a promoter to create a fake flyer for a party hosted by Miss Ventura. This fake posting allowed Miss Ventura to have an excuse to go to Miami, Florida. Didn't I tell y'all? Miami. And get her away from her boyfriend by using the guise of a legitimate event that she had to attend. Miss Ventura was stunned at how easily Mr. Combs was able to recruit others to lie for him. That's typical narc behavior. Miss Ventura was uncomfortable with the fake flyer, but because the request to go to Miami was made by the owner of her record label, and because she was scared to go against his wishes and face repercussions to her career, Miss Ventura agreed to join Mr. Combs in Florida. During this trip to Miami, Mr. Combs provided Miss Ventura with largest amount of drugs. She became more intoxicated than she had ever before, and her intoxication lasted throughout the weekend trip. As she wanted Mr. Combs to continue to support her career, she felt she could not refuse Mr. Combs, urging her to take more Tic Tacs. After providing her with Tic Tacs, Mr. Combs had sex with her during this trip. Within 2 years of meeting Mr. Combs, Miss Ventura found herself lured into the immediate circle of her boss, the owner of her record label, and one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry. They are going to take him down because this is detailed. This is so detailed, it's not even funny. Now, I did watch some other videos where they read Kiki's, the document paperwork. It was detailed, don't get me wrong, but this is specifics. We're getting like detailed upon detailed upon detailed. Kiki's was a lot of instances that people are debating, oh, what caused him to do this? What caused him to do that? With this, it's a little bit less debatable because she was very young and she was impressionable. Even though, in my opinion, I still don't think that Kiki, in my opinion, did anything for him to do some of the stuff that she alleged that he did. But that's just my opinion. From the very start of that relationship, Mr. Combs exerted his power and influence over Miss Ventura. This dynamic was fueled by their nearly 20-year age difference, as well as their relative positions in the entertainment industry, with Mr. Combs considered a music mogul and Miss Ventura at the start of her career as an entertainer. Mr. Combs' aggressive and demanding approach to those he worked with made it impossible for anyone to challenge him, and Miss Ventura soon learned that Mr. Combs insisted on blind loyalty from everyone in his circle. Although Miss Ventura had saved up earnings from her young modeling career, Mr. Combs' display of wealth was intimidating to her. Mr. Combs paid for things with wads of cash and would repeatedly tell Miss Ventura, "Don't worry about money, I have money." Mr. Combs expensed lavish vacations for him, and Miss Ventura purchased a car for her, paid for an apartment, provided her with extensive amounts of designer clothing. This sounds very similar to the stuff that Young Miami is doing right now. You know what's crazy? Let me tell y'all something. If Diddy had not got with Young Miami, the City Girls relationship would not look as severed as it does now. I really feel like he has a play into that. I really feel like he's in Carisha's ear and telling her, you're more of a star than she is. She's a hood booger. She's a rat. I could just see this being done. And y'all know my prediction's always true. I'm telling you. Because I'm telling that Breakfast Club interview, I recapped it. A lot of you guys, oh, you're reading too much into it. No, body language doesn't, you can't read too much into body language. They looked uncomfortable. They looked pissed at each other. I'm just saying. Around 2008 or 2009, Mr. Combs began to rent an apartment in Manhattan for Ms. Ventura. The apartment was within walking distance of Mr. Combs' New York residence. He first showed Ms. Ventura the apartment by bringing her there along with her parents. Ms. Ventura's parents were skeptical of the mogul's display of wealth, but proud of their daughter's newfound success. Around 2010, Mr. Combs paid for an apartment for Ms. Ventura in Los Angeles, which was located 5 minutes away from Mr. Combs' residence. He paid for many of her apartments in California and also purchased a Jaguar for her around 2013 or 2014. All aspects of Ms. Ventura's life was controlled by either Mr. Combs or his management companies. Same thing where it looks like it's becoming like that for Carisha. Every event Ms. Ventura attended, from the travel to the makeup and clothing, was paid for directly by Mr. Combs and his affiliated companies. Compounding this all-encompassing intrusion into her life, Mr. Combs secured his control over the young and impressionable Ms. Ventura by introducing her to a tic-tac-fueled lifestyle that kept her complacent and complaint. Mr. Combs first introduced Ms. Ventura to opioids around 2008 and would often have Tic Tacs and other Tic Tacs out in the open like candy. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs has been addicted to Tic Tacs, painkillers, and took ecstasy frequently. Now that's news to me. I didn't see him as a, hip hopper, like a Tic Tac taker. I just don't see him as that, like, at all. I don't see him as a guy that is the Tic Tac. I see him as being a drunk. Now that I can see that 100%. He gives me that down. But a Tic Tac taker, that's insane. At first, Ms. Ventura was given the Tic Tacs that Mr. Combs received from a doctor in Miami, Florida. Eventually, when Mr. Combs exhausted his supply of Tic Tacs, he demanded that Ms. Ventura Ooh, I had to read that quietly. Oh, he's going down. He demanded that Ms. Ventura took the Tic Tacs from this Miami doctor in her own name. Mr. Combs also became deeply involved in Ms. Ventura's personal life, because if he did that in his own name, right, in her own name, that could legally be traced back. Medically, paper-wise, there's a paper trail now on him. Mr. Combs also became deeply involved in Ms. Ventura's personal life, with his personal staff attending to Ms. Ventura's day-to-day travel and other needs, including medical care. On multiple occasions, Mr. Combs had Ms. Ventura's personal medical records sent directly to his email address. For instance, when Ms. Ventura began experiencing memory loss, potentially due to excessive Tic Tac use and or head injuries caused by Mr. Combs' beatings, as described below, her MRI results were provided directly to Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs also repeatedly arranged for his staff to drive Ms. Ventura to certain doctor's appointments. In this way, Mr. Combs exerted ownership over Ms. Ventura. As another example of the ways in which he manipulated Ms. Ventura and ensured obedience early on in their relationship. He asked Ms. Ventura what she called her grandfather. When Ms. Ventura said that she referred to her grandfather as Pop Pop, Mr. Combs perversely insisted that Ms. Ventura referred to him with that nickname. Now that's sick. That's all. Like, I don't think girls should call their husband's or boyfriend's daddy. I'm not saying in a playful way, but like Heavenly does. I don't like that Heavenly does that. Like just call him daddy for no reason. That's weird to me. I know you could play every now and be like, hey daddy, like that, like that's different. But when you just daddy, come here, daddy, like that's weird. What started as a whirlwind of celebrity meetings and tic-tac and alcohol-fueled parties, however, quickly turned into frightening and violent. Ms. Ventura was also exposed to the intense violence that pervaded Mr. Combs' rise to fame. For example, on one occasion, when Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura were using tic-tacs together in his own, one of his security staff barged in and announced that Suge Knight, a longtime rival of Mr. Combs, was spotted at a Mel drive-in diner in Los Angeles. Mr. Combs began to get dressed, retrieved multiple pow-pows from a safe, and ran out of his home to where he believed Mr. Knight was dining. Ms. Ventura became frightened and began to cry. On at least 2 occasions, Mr. Combs demanded that Ms. Ventura hold Mr. Combs' strap in her purse. Ms. Ventura had no familiarity with these pow-pows and was petrified that he would use the firearms and it would accidentally go off in her purse. There was no clear reason why Mr. Combs required her to hold to the straps, except to reinforce to his young girlfriend that he was violent, powerful, and dangerous. Over the next decade, multiple times each year, Mr. Combs would violently abuse Ms. Ventura, leaving bruises all on her body. After every instance in which he abused Ms. Ventura, Mr. Combs would use his money and power to orchestrate extensive efforts to hide the evidence of his abuse, including by hiding Ms. Ventura in hotels for days at a time to let her bruises heal. Now, all of this, if this is true, he's no better than R. Kelly. You're at the same level of R. Kelly if you're doing stuff like this, because not only you're inflicting damage on her, you're hiding it too, just like R. Kelly would do by putting them down in those basements. In one instance, after a party with Jay-Z, Mr. Combs beat Ms. Ventura repeatedly in an escalade, including by kicking and powing her. He forced her out of the vehicle on 5th Avenue in NYC. She was eventually able to hail a cab and get to her apartment in Manhattan, where she cried in fear, realizing there was no one she could tell about what had happened at the hands of this incredibly powerful man. She spent the subsequent 3 days hiding in her apartment. In January 2009, after Mr. Combs learned that Ms. Ventura spoke to another music manager at a party in LA, he became enraged. She had hoped speaking to his manager would allow her to further grow her career and that Mr. Combs would be happy for her. But instead, he became extremely angry and pulled her out of the club where the party was taking place. In the car leaving the club, Mr. Combs beat Ms. Ventura, pushing her into a corner of the vehicle and stomping on her face. Oh, damn. Mr. Combs' security office, Roger Bonds, tried to stop the beating, but was unable to de-escalate the situation. When the car arrived at Mr. Combs' residence, Ms. Ventura attempted to run away, but Mr. Combs followed her and proceeded to again kick her in the face. Ms. Ventura was bleeding profusely and was ushered into Mr. Combs' home, where she began to throw up from the violent assault. After recognizing the damage he had done and the physical evidence of his abuse, Mr. Combs panicked and forced his staff to bring Ms. Ventura to a hotel suite at the London Hotel in Los Angeles, where she was required to stay for a week. When she's staying at these hotels after these abuses, certain injuries don't heal without medical care. So, like, I just don't get how anybody was able to stay too hush-hush about this. That's the only thing that, like, gets me. I believe it 100%. But I question the people around them. How are y'all able to not notice something was going on and not say anything? Especially with him kicking his... Diddy's a big nigga. Like, that's crazy. During this stay, as her injuries from the beating healed, Ms. Ventura began to fully realized that Mr. Combs' tremendously loyal network not only knew about and witnessed his assault, that's what I'm talking about, right? But also these witnesses were not willing to do anything meaningful to stop Mr. Combs' behavior. She recognized that she was powerless and that reporting Mr. Combs to the authorities would not alter Mr. Combs' status or influence, but would merely give Mr. Combs another excuse to hurt her. While in the hotel, she asked to go home to her parents, but Mr. Combs wouldn't let her leave. She lied to her mom when asked about an online gossip forum that reported the assault. Mr. Combs proceeded to instruct his assistant to purchase excessive amounts of gifts for Ms. Ventura, which were delivered to the hotel room where she remained trapped. Ms. Ventura was terrified, isolated, and unable to see a pathway out of Mr. Combs' abusive hold on her life. She found herself becoming numb to the abuse she was experiencing and became entirely beholden to Mr. Combs' demands. She began to blindly follow his instructions out of fear again of being on the receiving end of a vicious beating. By Mr. Combs' own admission, his relationship with Ms. Ventura was like Bobby and Whitney, a clear acknowledgement of the unequal power dynamic and excessive DV that permeated the relationship. From the outside looking in, Ms. Ventura had heard others refer to her relationship with Mr. Combs as an akin to Ike and Tina. Her volatile and abusive partner, who also owned her label and therefore held her future success in his hands, have fully exerted control over every aspect of her life. They say that almost every line. They're trying to make that point clear. Within a few months of beginning a romantic relationship with 40-year-old Mr. Combs, the 22-year-old Ms. Ventura felt beholden to his whims and demands. While in NYC, he wanted to engage in a fantasy called voyeurism. Mr. Combs said it would turn him on if he saw Ms. Ventura with another Subway sandwich. Now, I'm not surprised at this at all. At all. And this is why I say he's no better than R. Kelly, if this is true. Because that's some of the same stuff that R. Kelly did with some of his victims. So you're just like him. The first time Mr. Combs hired a man and brought the man to his home in LA, the man, Mr. Combs, and Ms. Ventura were masquerade masks. It sounds like a whole movie. Wore masquerade masks and ingested Tic Tacs. Y'all know the word Tic Tacs. Y'all know the definition. Mr. Combs directed Ms. Ventura to perform acts with this man while Mr. Combs watched them. He jacked off while he directed Ms. Ventura and the man to do specific acts. The entire encounter lasted multiple days. Oh my God. Mr. Combs began to call the arrangement a freak off or a FO. Nowadays, that would be called an OF. He would repeatedly tell Ms. Ventura at random moments that he wanted an FO. Ms. Ventura was eventually expected to facilitate the location and the hiring of the male workers. At certain points during Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs' relationship, he would insist on an FO weekly. Mr. Combs would repeatedly tell Ms. Ventura that this practice was our thing and our secret. FOs would often take place in hotel suites, often at the Trump International Hotel in Columbus Circle. Child, Donald Trump is going to be quaking when he gets, here it is, because you know he's not really here for the garage. And that's some garage activities, okay? The London Hotel in LA, the Intercontinental Century City, the Intercontinental Atlanta, the Intercontinental NYC, the One Hotel in New York and in Miami, the Mandarin or Oriental Hotel in New York and in Miami, the Fontainebleau in Miami, the Beverly Hills Hotel, and the Shutters on the Beach in Los Angeles. On one occasion, around 2013, Mr. Combs had an FO set up at their Intercontinental Hotel in New York City, after which he was charged with tens of thousands of dollars and damaged by the hotel. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs' chief of staff, Tony Fletcher, paid the invoice charged by the hotel. Ms. Ventura was eventually instructed to use websites and services to find male 304 workers to participate in FOs. Mr. Combs told Ventura to search for large black Subway sandwiches. Huh. You a nasty motherfucker. That is crazy. Not a big, large Subway sandwich. And you want a black Subway sandwich at that. So you got a BBC fetish. I wonder what website did he elicit Arrows Girls, or did he go to Mega Personal? Okay, thank you, Savannah, for putting the nigga on, because I never heard of them type things until Savannah Maria Garcia said it on South Central Baddies, because I don't be on them websites. Okay, sometimes Mr. Combs would play to fly the male 304 workers to his location, including to multiple cities in the U.S. as well as abroad. He required Ms. Ventura and his staff to help him make these arrangements. Mr. Combs' assistants would help to set up his FOs, including by setting up the hotel suites with baby oil and Astroglide. That's a sticky, wet situation. Mr. Combs always supplied Ms. Ventura and the 304 workers with large amounts of Tic Tacs before and during the FOs. Ms. Ventura was given ecstasy, powdered donuts, ketamine, weed, and alcohol in excessive amounts during the FOs, which allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. It became commonplace to get IV fluids in the days after an FO to recover from the excessive substances pushed upon her. Ms. Ventura was required to dress up in lingerie for an FO, and Mr. Combs insisted she wear all white nail polish to contrast her nails with the skin of the black man he hired to have intercourse with her. During the FO, this is so sick. During the FO, Mr. Combs would instruct Ms. Ventura to pour excessive amounts of oil on herself. Mr. Combs would then instruct Ms. Ventura and the 304 workers to speak to each other, then would specifically tell Ms. Ventura where to touch the 304 workers. Mr. Combs would say things like, grab that big Subway sandwich, and ask her, how does it feel? As he directed her to perform for him. During the FOs, in addition to directing Ms. Ventura and jacking off, Mr. Combs would use his phone, laptop, and tablet to film Ms. Ventura having intercourse with the 304 workers. He treated the encounter as a personal art project, adjusting the candles he used for lighting to frame the videos he took. While Ms. Ventura quickly deleted any photographs of video of acts if they were taken on her phone, Mr. Combs repeatedly made it clear that he retained many videos of Ms. Ventura during FOs. So this might be to the point where they're going to have to raid Mr. Combs' house and all of his electronic devices. Just like R. Kelly. That shit is sick. Even when she deleted the videos, Mr. Combs would tell Ms. Ventura that he was able to recover deleted videos from her devices. On one occasion, he sat next to her on a flight and made her watch a video she thought she had deleted, reinforcing her inability to escape and the immense power he had held over her. Mr. Combs would pay the male 304 workers a few thousands of dollars in cash for their services. Barbie is quaking. During some FOs, Mr. Combs would become extremely intoxicated and would hit Ms. Ventura in front of the male 304 workers. Ms. Ventura was repulsed by Mr. Combs' demands, but between the physical beating and recognizing his incredible power and incredible temper, Ms. Ventura became petrified of her partner and boss and felt that she could not say no. He even would present her with lavish gifts prior to or in the middle of the FO, seemingly acknowledging the ways in which these forced encounters constituted work for Ms. Ventura and that he needed to compensate her for this work. At one point, he had given her so many designer bracelets for FOs, and immediately following his brutal beatings, that she felt that she was shackled by his presence. Frequently, her anxiety before an FO would become so great that she would become ill, sometimes to the point of vomiting, while kneeling over the toilet. Mr. Combs would shame her into performing for him, eventually forcing her to get up and proceed with the encounter. She knew firsthand that telling Mr. Combs that she did not want to engage in FOs was met with anger and violence. In addition, any suggestion that Ms. Ventura would refuse the FOs or otherwise report Mr. Combs' abuse was met with ultimatums by Mr. Combs, who would say that Ms. Ventura could not go to the police because she had a lot to lose. I feel like had she reported all this earlier, she wouldn't be alive right now. So I feel like she did at the perfect time. Right now, there's like, we're in the woke era. So if something were to happen to her now, we're going to know that he has something to do with it. Back in the days, people were not that attentive. People used to be dumb. They used to be naive. So you could get away with anything in the 90s, early 2000s, even the 80s. Now, good luck. Around August 2015, for example, in the middle of a surprise birthday dinner for Ms. Ventura's 29th birthday, Mr. Combs insisted that Ms. Ventura leave the party and go to a hotel for an FO. When she expressed that she did not want to go, Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura cornered by his security staff in order to force her to leave with him. After this FO, Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura went back to the hotel room that Ms. Ventura was staying in, where some of the Ms. Ventura's friends were already hanging out. Mr. Combs was severely intoxicated and at one point during the night picked up one of Ms. Ventura's friends like a child and dangled the friend over the balcony of the 17th hotel suite. Ms. Ventura and her friends were scared by Mr. Combs' erratic behavior, but Ms. Ventura was heavily sedated because of the tic-tac she took to participate in the FO and therefore was unable to respond to Mr. Combs' terrifying behavior. The FOs became work for Ms. Ventura, and despite her resistance to it, Mr. Combs insisted on her intrinsically staged and forced sexual encounters between Ms. Ventura and various male sex workers. Anytime she tried to create distance between her and Mr. Combs, he used his networks to find her and convince her to return to his abuse. On multiple occasions, Mr. Combs sent his employees to lure Ms. Ventura back. In 2011, during a rough patch in Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura's relationship, Ms. Ventura had a relationship with musician Kid Cudi. This is why I always will side with Kiki, because people got to understand. And when it comes to relationships, it's often usual that people go back to their abusers. And it's not always due to one type of situation that they end up going back. So I hate when people try to make it sound, oh, why'd you stay with them so longer? You're not going to know it until you're in it. And then you're going to be like, oh, that's why. So I hate when people try to use that as an excuse. In 2011, when you really think about it, it really wasn't that too long ago. That's about 12 years ago, but like the years go by fast. So this is really still recent. In 2011, during a rough patch in Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura's relationship, Ms. Ventura had a brief relationship with musician Kid Cudi. When Mr. Combs returned from a trip, he demanded another FO of Ms. Ventura. She said, now. During this FO, Mr. Combs found Ms. Ventura's phone and found emails between her and Kid Cudi. Mr. Combs became enraged and proceeded to place a manual corkscrew between his fingers and lunged at Ms. Ventura. Ms. Ventura ran away to stay at Kid Cudi's home to escape Mr. Combs' wrath. Soon thereafter, one of Mr. Combs' staff told Ms. Ventura that he needed to just talk to Mr. Combs, even though Mr. Combs was enraged. Feeling like she could not escape Mr. Combs and his network of enforcers, Ms. Ventura returned to Mr. Combs. He hit her several times, then kicked her in the back as she tried to run out the door. She went to her parents' home in Connecticut, where her mother took pictures of the bruises Mr. Combs had left on Ms. Ventura's body. In February 2012, during Paris Fashion Week, Mr. Combs told Ms. Ventura that he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car, that he wanted to ensure that Kid Cudi was home with his friends when it happened. Around that time, Kid Cudi's car exploded in his driveway. Ms. Ventura was terrified as she began to fully comprehend what Mr. Combs was both willing and able to do to those he believed had slighted him. In 2015, Ms. Ventura spoke to a popular music manager at an after party in a hotel suite in Las Vegas. Mr. Combs saw her speaking to this manager and sternly told her to step into the bedroom and joining the suite. In the bedroom, Mr. Combs beat Ventura severely. She ran from corner to corner of the room, trying to avoid Mr. Combs beating and kicking. When she tried to lock herself in the bathroom, he pushed her through and punched and kicked her while she was curled up in the toilet, up under the toilet. Her screams were drowned by the loud music playing in the outside area of the hotel suite. When Mr. Combs, head of security and assistant, saw Ms. Ventura after the assault, they began to cry. Ms. Ventura had 2 black eyes, a burst and a bruised lip, and a huge welt on her forehead. Upon seeing the results of the vicious attack, Mr. Combs immediately took steps to conceal his wrongdoing. Let me guess, he went and got her gifts. He forced Ms. Ventura to stay at home in his homely hills along with one of his sons. While there, Mr. Combs FaceTimed Ms. Ventura and stated, "You gotta go up and put more makeup on. My son can't see you like that." I wonder which son. She did put makeup on per Mr. Combs' demands. Ms. Ventura felt that she had no choice but to obey her abuser. Even though security guards, assistants, and friends saw the situation she was in, no one dared to help her or speak up on her behalf. She therefore had no choice but to remain subservient. Later in 2015, while shooting a movie in Cape Town, South Africa, Ms. Ventura began a flirtatious relationship with an actor. She spent New Year's Eve with this actor, but Mr. Combs soon found out. Mr. Combs called the actor and threatened him. The actor proceeded to call Ms. Ventura and tell her, "You really need to call Mr. Combs." Now, the actor needs to come forward. Who is this actor? Now we're going to start to look up the movie that she filmed in South Africa. So the movie looks like it was Honey 3. So Honey 3 was put out in 2016, and they filmed it like a year prior. So it had to be Honey 3, Dare to Dance. That movie was filmed in Cape Town, South Africa. So it kind of aligns with the movie she was that the document was talking about. And it could be a large amount of people, because there are a good amount of male cast members in this movie. One of them is Kenny. Now, Kenny, you guys, is the guy that you guys see on the movie cover. Now, he's one of the main characters. So it probably was him, but it could have been any of the other male characters in the movie as well. So just so you guys know the movie that they were talking about. It was Honey 3, okay? Because it was filmed in Africa. That poor white boy, if it was him, he probably was scared out of his mind. All right. Later in 2015, he found out that, he was talking to the co-star, and in or around March 2016, during an FO at a hotel in Century, Los Angeles, Mr. Combs became extremely intoxicated and punched Ms. Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye. After he fell asleep, Ms. Ventura tried to leave the hotel room, but as she exited, Mr. Combs awoke and began screaming at Ms. Ventura. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. He grabbed at her, then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her, causing glass to crash around them as she ran to the elevator to escape. She managed to get into the elevator, but when she got into the lobby, quickly took a cab to her apartment. Upon realizing that her running away would cause Mr. Combs to even be angry with her and completely stuck in a vicious cycle of abuse, Ms. Ventura returned to the hotel with the intention of apologizing for running away from her abuser. When she returned, hotel staff security urged her to get back into the cab and go to her apartment, suggesting that they had seen security footage showing Mr. Combs beating Ms. Ventura and throwing glass at her in the hotel hallway. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs paid $50,000 for the hallway security footage from that evening. Ooh, that nigga smart. Because that could have been another trail. Because that's not too far. We're in 2023 right now. This is not too far. They could have retrieved that footage. After this, Ms. Ventura left her home in Comstock and went to hide away at a friend's home in Florida. James Cruz, president of Bad Boy Management, tracked Ms. Ventura down and told her that her single would not be released if she did not answer Mr. Combs' phone calls. A woman who worked at Sony Music reached out to her with a similar ultimatum concerning her record. Incredibly, Mr. Combs even convinced one of his attorneys to call Ms. Ventura at this time. This lawyer told Ms. Ventura that it's in your best interest to call Mr. Combs back. Each time Ms. Ventura tried to run away, Mr. Combs and his powerful network would force her back to him. She needs to write a book. Dead ass. Because this is like a book. We're at an hour. I'm gonna have to separate the video, y'all. This is gonna be the Cassie and Diddy video because I know y'all not gonna sit down for no 2-hour video. That is crazy unless it's the after show. You know what I'm saying? Like that. She needs to write a book. She needs to write a book. This is like a story. Mr. Combs' tight hold over her life had irreparable damages to her friendships. Around 2018, when Miss Ventura was with her friend Carrie Morgan at her house, Mr. Combs used his key to Miss Ventura's house and came in unannounced. He and Miss Morgan had an altercation during which Mr. Combs threw a hanger at Miss Morgan. No more wire hangers. Upon information and belief, the incident resulted in a settlement between Mr. Combs and Miss Morgan, and Miss Ventura ended up paying Miss Morgan additional funds in an attempt to resolve the dispute between her and her close friend and her abusive and controlling boyfriend. The relationship between Miss Ventura and Miss Morgan has been severed ever since. Seeing the extreme measures Mr. Combs took to keep a tight hold, Miss Ventura and isolate her from her support network, and having experienced the repercussions of rejecting his demands, Miss Ventura felt that saying no to Mr. Combs would cost her something: her family, her friends, her career, or even her life. By 2017 and 2018, Miss Ventura became desperate to leave Mr. Combs and his abuse of her. She recognized that if she stayed with him, she would never be able to have a successful career or be physically and mentally safe. She therefore became determined to completely break away from Mr. Combs and his cycle of abuse and made concerted efforts to avoid him. In September 2018, she joined Mr. Combs for a dinner at an Italian restaurant in Malibu, California, for which she believed would be a discussion about concluding their relationship for good. After dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura returned to Miss Ventura's home, which was paid by Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs forced himself into her apartment and tried to kiss Miss Ventura. She told him to stop and attempted to push him away. Mr. Combs then forcibly pushed Miss Ventura's clothing and unbuckled his belt. He proceeded to take advantage of Miss Ventura while she repeatedly said no and tried to push him away. Soon thereafter, Miss Ventura took steps to completely separate herself from her longtime abuser by leaving the home he had paid for and returning the car he purchased for her. Despite moving away, Miss Ventura's address was posted online in early 2019, leading to fears for her safety. Miss Ventura, who was under immense duress during the months after Mr. Combs took advantage of her, took all steps possible to entirely remove herself from the abuser's ambit, including by entering into contracts to end her record deal with Bad Boy Entertainment. As a result of the immense trauma Miss Ventura endured for over a decade with Mr. Combs, she has suffered and continues to suffer immense emotional distress. The birth of her 2 children, however, allowed her a new lease on life and gave her purpose. She credits her children from saving her from the trauma that had consumed her for over a decade. To rebuild her career and life, Miss Ventura needed to completely reinvent herself. She checked herself into an inpatient treatment at a center where she first confronted the extent of the trauma she lives with. She had required intensive therapy and other medical care to recover from Mr. Combs' abuse, and she will forever live with the physical and psychological repercussions for over the decade of violence, fear, and exploitation she endured. Although Ms. Ventura was unable to speak against the years of abuse she endured at the hands of Mr. Combs, she has since been able to rebuild her life and confront her trauma. Thanks to the passage of New York's Adult Survivors Act and California's Sexual Abuse Accountability and Cover-Up Act, she is now ready to take action and confront her abusers and to hold him and those who enabled his abuse accountable for their actions. And y'all, that ends it. Oh, no, it doesn't. Hold on, y'all. I gotta see. Okay, yeah, that ends it. Whew, baby, I'm exhausted. That is crazy. That to me, like, y'all saw I did the Lizzo video. Oh my God. She needs to write a book. She needs to write a book. She needs to write a book. Diddy is disgusting for all that stuff. And it's a miracle she's still alive. That lady should not be alive right now. For you to get abused like that over and over and over again, nobody try to help you. You try to run away, but they bring you back, and you still alive now is insane. And I'm glad she's speaking up now versus trying to speak out then, because I'm telling y'all, she would not be alive. Now, of course, anytime when these stories come out, people then start to kind of back up the claims. I know a lot of people were going, I saw some comments on some of the blogs. They were going in on some of the people starting to speak out. My whole thing is, y'all can't get mad at people, you know, backing up her story now and not then, because you got to give the victim the time to be ready to speak out. So had they said something about all the stuff that happened to her before she had a chance to, it would kind of be robbing her of low-key healing, because you're not letting her tell her own story. And I'm not talking about the people that was around it. I'm talking about the people that experienced some of the same stuff that he did to her, to him, but or knew about it from a distance, not the people that was around while it was happening, if y'all get what I mean, okay? So a lot of celebrities are already coming out in support of her. Of course, Aubrey, I knew Aubrey O'Day somewhere cackling and putting on a face full of makeup. So Aubrey O'Day said, been trying to tell y'all for years, praise up for this queen at Cassie. One day y'all gonna put some respect on my name when I tell you things. Thank you. Dawn also came out and said, praying for Cassie and her family for peace and healing. You are beautiful and brave. Kalina, where you at, girl? Where you at, Bookie Butt? You're a little quiet over there. Kalina. Yeah, it wasn't just 2 members of Diddy Dirty Money. It was a 3rd. So you need to speak up, because I know that you can. All right. And they also played like they showed like Aubrey O'Day put up like a interview that she did with that girl on Teen Mom, where she basically asked her, does she know who took out Pac? And she answered it and basically said that Biggie's mom told her who took out Pac, and Suge Knight told her who took out Pac. And I'm guessing both of them probably said Diddy. Okay, didn't I tell y'all she's gonna be over there somewhere laughing with a face full of makeup? Because Aubrey doesn't go nowhere without a face full of makeup. Just beat. You'll go to bed, she beat. Okay. Also, of course, my favorite is Azalea Banks, you know, spoke out. Y'all don't like her. I don't like some of her ways, but I love her music. Okay. She says, this is true. One time Diddy beat her up so bad, he sent her on a 3-week vacation to Hawaii just so no one would see or question how her face got like that. Another violent hip-hop homosexual. This is what mental illness looks like for all of you armchair psychologists. And then also somebody else that spoke out was Cassie's makeup artist. So her former makeup artist also spoke out and said that he saw instances of this, and it's great that she's speaking out. Now, my question is, Young Miami, how do you feel about this? Like, this is your whole nigga. And to me, if she's experienced all of this, I, in my mind, think that you've experienced some percentage of this. And you're just not saying anything, and you're hiding it. Because there's no way somebody could do that to a woman for over a decade and just magically wake up, get with another woman, and stop doing it altogether. That's not just how human nature works. It takes forever to stop a pattern like that, especially if you ain't go to therapy for it, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, it's going to take forever. So my question is to you, Miami, what do you think about this? Now, y'all little pop-outs and publicly, it's not going to hit the same. Because all those stuff that I just read, it's too detailed for somebody to make up. Like, come on now. You can't even deny something like that. It's too detailed. I'm talking, they got dates, they got hotels, they got, oh my God, like that's detailed information. That's extremely hard for somebody to just come up out the blue sky. Okay? Let me know what you guys think. I hope she does get her justice. I hope he pays up every pretty penny that he has. Okay? Let me know what you guys think about this whole lawsuit. Do you guys think she'll take a victory of it? Should she be concerned with her safety? And should Miami speak out? I think she needs to not pop out with him publicly if she's going to be with him. I don't think she's obligated to speak out, even though it'd be nice. But, you know, that is her nigga. So, of course, she's going to take the side of her nigga. But the public pop-outs, we're not trying to see them no more, okay? Let me know what you guys think down below, and we're out, babies.
No personal thing.